Welcome everyone to Solomon's Crown. So today, guys, we're gonna get straight to it. We got this whole the baby debacle again. The baby's in the news.
Once
Before,
again.
yeah, once again, he was in trouble because of his comments that he had towards the LGBTQ plus community, and now he is in the news because of his whole incident with his girlfriend slash baby mama, DaniLeigh, an American singer. So, long story short, apparently he had an altercation with her. He kicked her out in spite of the fact that she was, taking care of their daughter. On one side, it said that he is a narcissist, allegedly, and he pretty much just used her, and that on one side he told her that he loved her, and on the other side he then switched up and said that she was just a side piece. And then on his side he's saying that, like, she's violent, she has history of putting on hands on people, and that he had to call the police, and he didn't want to tarnish his already kind of vulnerable reputation at this point. So what can we learn from this? Is it another case of women wanting to get with a rapper and biting off more than they can chew, or is it the case of the baby just trying to kind of keep his reputation intact, keep his career intact, and maybe she's just like a quote unquote crazy ex-girlfriend type deal? What do you think about this, Will?
All right. So, as I'm gonna state, as always, there's two sides to every story.
Mm-hmm.
Based off of like what I've seen and how he was acting, to say that she's a side chick, a little far fetched. I mean, he was on IG live with her, like telling her, like, "Oh, I love you," this, and that, kissing her, like just acting like somewhat of a relationship, depending on how you see relationships nowadays. But I think that what we can learn from this situation is stop going after rappers. I mean, to be honest, like that's the thing is like these women go after these highly successful men, and we've already established that having a baby with a man is not going to be a way to keep them. Especially the more successful a man is, the less he kind of feels like he has to lose when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to losing somebody that he has a child with, because we got multiple artists. Even Nick Cannon's got like 7 babies mamas. You got Future. I don't even know how many babies mamas he got. Like, dude, just like literally look at a chick, and he's made jokes about it. Where it's just like he did the "I'm so sexy" or "Too sexy," where he looked at a
Yeah,
chick and she got pregnant. And he was just like, "That's what it is."
yeah.
They have the money to do this, but from a layman's man standpoint, is like, bro, like having a baby with a man is not going to keep him. These women also think that they can change these dudes. And the thing is like, I watched the interview with Joe Budden the other day where he was just like, the older a man gets, the less he wants to deal with problems and drama. So let's just say you're above 30, um, and a woman starts acting wild with you, like acting out of character, doing things that you don't necessarily want. And what are you going to do? All right, I'm done. Like, but younger dudes will potentially make a relationship last longer. They'll deal with the physical altercations, like abuse, things like that, and kind of make it work. And based off of the live, like, why is she putting herself in this situation? Because I mean, he was like being somewhat reserved at first, like, yo, like I'm recording this for my own purposes, this, and that. And she's
Mm-hmm.
still like provoking him. And to a point where he was like, oh, okay, like you don't want to, okay, let me talk about your family. Let me talk about this. Let me talk about that. And that's when she was
Mm-hmm.
just like, yo, that's
Going
kind of
off, yeah.
yeah, that's kind of disrespectful. But she put herself in that situation where she could have just, if she was just literally there to grab stuff for her baby and dip, she could have just did that. But she
Mm-hmm.
chose to take the she didn't take the higher ground, because that's the thing, is like now she discredited herself, and he pressed charges against her for assault.
Yeah.
So what grounds does she have to stand on at this point? And that's the thing, is like, if somebody doesn't want you there, like if somebody is like literally like dogging you out like that, why would you still want to be a part of that? I get it. She is in a vulnerable state. She just had a baby and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a lot of trust in this man. One, because she had his baby. Two, because the way he was acting was pretty much like, oh, we're about to be together. But the thing
Yeah.
about it is like, he's also had a history of just being wild. Like, he's had a history of just changing up. And I mean, truthfully, he's not somebody who is stable to in my eyes. Like, I mean, with everything in his past that he's been going through, like, he's not somebody that is going to change just because you had a kid with him. I mean, he already had a previous baby's mama. Apparently, when they started talking, he was already talking to other chicks and stuff like that. And that was the worst part too. Is like, even in the live, she was just like, "Well, you had sex with me last night, and you didn't pull out." And it's just like, what are you expecting from this dude? And then she was like, he sent Plan B to my house too. And it's like, and here you are back in his apartment trying to be
Exactly.
like, why not remove yourself from the situation? And it's not like she's dependent on him. Like, she's a successful singer, artist too. So it's like,
Mm.
why do you like, you don't, if he's going to kick you out at 3 o'clock in the morning, then just leave. Like,
I
it's,
mean, it's just I don't know, man. It's like I don't understand how it gets to even that point because it goes back to, what we're talking about in our chats, where nowadays you have these little, those little random YouTube channels that do like the questionnaires in public.
mhm.
And, you talk to a lot of these young girls and they'll be like, yo, would you rather, scammer or a rapper or drug dealer or whatever versus, a white collar 9 to 5 dude? And even though they make the same money, like they always choose the fast money dude. And it's like, I get the allure of, the hip hop artists, the rappers or whatever, especially, growing up, because a lot of times it's those hip hop artists that are the quote unquote male leaders that we see a lot of the times, unfortunately, in the black community. But it's like, that the baby has multiple baby mamas. Same with Future, he has multiple baby mamas. Why would you, as a female, granted, he is, he may be attractive or whatever for a female, but it's like, in the back of your head, you're trying to, get a guy for yourself. Why would you still sleep with that dude? And then you sleep with that dude, you get pregnant by him, he dogs you out, and then what did they say? Men ain't shit.
Yeah,
I don't get it. I don't
because,
get it.
and then that's the thing too, is like, so right now, like, equality in
Yeah.
relationships, equality with versus men and women, the value of men and women is being up for debate. Because
Yeah.
I watched, I think it was you who sent me that video where the
Yeah, I
female
said
was
yeah,
like,
I did.
women don't need men, this, and that, and
Mm.
men can't deal with women being successful and having their own money and having their own places and stuff like that. And it's like, where? Like, the men that you're dealing with can't deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are plenty men out there who are just like, oh, you got your own thing going, like, yo, let's get it together. And then it'll be
Yeah.
like, well, you don't go out partying, you can't fly me to Greece like this one guy did. It's always a comparison.
There's always a
And
comparison. It's never enough.
no, and that's the thing, is like the video goes on further and it comes down to like people having too many options. You think
Mm-hmm.
about your grandparents, like their great grandparents, like there wasn't really many options. Like, you kind of just like
Mm-hmm.
stuck with somebody because they were going through the same things you were going through. You had a level of understanding, and truthfully, like, you didn't need to be flown to Greece and cater to the whole weekend for a man to show that he values you. Another
Mm-hmm.
video I sent or got sent was a female talking about like women, you don't need to deal with men, and if you are dealing with them, make them pay you. She was like, I got $500 just for a dude to apologize to me. Another week, a dude was about to buy me a bottle in the club, and I changed my mind and said I don't want the bottle, and he just gave her the $500, and I'm just like,
Oh my God.
it's not
Like,
only the
man.
fact that so men have created this situation for women
Yes.
to allow themselves to think that that is what true love and affection is.
That's acceptable behavior. Simps, man.
And even though it's like, yo, it ain't tricking if you got it is the saying, but at a certain point, bro, like
Yeah,
it's like, yo,
yeah.
y'all are just, you're like, for the
You're messing the
box,
game up.
bro, like for the
Yeah.
box, nah, bro, it's not, it's never that serious. Like, yo, like for me
Never.
to just go in the club and just give a chick $500 that I just met, like that's to me a sin, bro. Like I don't care who you are, bro. Like nah, like because it's just like okay, like you get the box and it's whack. Now what? Like, bro, I value that $500 more than I value the box. So it's
Yeah.
one of those things where like I'm not going, bro. Like, and that's the thing is like there's plenty of dudes who are just out there and they got money and they don't have uh the mentality to pursue women, the mentality to like be aggressive in situations where they need to be aggressive to get a woman, as far as like going and talking to her, presenting her with a situation like a date, or even just like being like just being able to pull a woman. Like that's the thing is like I mean, not all men are built the same. That's the thing. It's like
Yeah,
there's a
nah,
lot of
yeah.
men out there who are passive, who aren't aggressive, who um and not even saying like aggressive in a bad way, but just like, yo, you see something you like, you pursue it. There's a lot of men who have money who just don't have that mentality. They're kind of just waiting for that special someone to kind of like show up and like it be the perfect movie, like romance things, this and that. And that's the same thing with women. Is like it's not all women. I mean, a vast majority is what it's looking like because social media has made it
Social
into
media is
that.
promoted in that.
And
Yeah,
if
for sure.
everybody is consuming social media at a higher rate than what they should, then that's what the stigma is going to be. But I
Mhm.
guarantee you that not all females are like that. Not all dudes are like
No.
that. Like even the
Mhm.
dudes that we talk to, even the dudes like the dudes that be hitting me up and sending me these videos and being like, yo, these chicks are wild, these dudes are wild. Like it's a vast majority where everybody's like, oh, why don't these dudes want to talk to me? This, and that. And it's like dudes are getting tired of approaching females, pursuing females, this, and that. And it's like, bro, like it's not worth the drama. It's not worth the stress. I'm gonna
It's
chase a
not.
bag over dealing with a bunch of drama, bro. Like, and that's the thing is like a lot of these dudes who are in the gym 24/7, a lot of these dudes who are just focusing on their stream and focusing on their content creation, like they might mess with a chick here and there, like whenever they come into the lives, but that thing is the chick is not going to stop them from doing what they've already been doing.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's what a lot of these females are trying to see it as. It's like, well, now I'm in your life, so incorporate me in all this stuff and we'll get the bag together. And then that's the thing too, is like you build a woman up and she gets to a point where she's like, well, I don't need this man anymore and I can get a better man who's doing better than him and this
Yeah.
and that. And
Hypergamy, yeah.
then that's the thing is like, because like you talked about, like the goal of mating, the goal of like in our genes and our DNA, like how it used to be is like to find the alpha in the group. So
Hmm.
if the dude that you were messing with necessarily wasn't the alpha at that point, and you meet another alpha, then it kind of sways your decision. It kind of makes you
Yeah.
think like, okay, like maybe this dude isn't doing enough for me. And that's where a lot of people fail with their relationships. But I just think that social media has really just misconstrued like what a
Oh, yeah.
relationship is, bro. Like,
Yeah.
and the thing is like for us, it's fine. Like we understand these things. We're older. Even the dudes that I mess with, I mean, like 20, I'd say 27 and up, are gonna realize that like social media is just a blinder. But we're talking about the dudes who are like 25, like 18 to 25, even now earlier, like 16 to 25. There's a
Hmm.
huge area of women who are just like just they expect all these things from a man who's just
Mm-hmm.
getting his life started, because those years are the years that you're going to school, you're trying to figure out
Yeah.
what you want to do in life. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a grind, like no
It's
matter
gonna
what
be
you're
hard.
doing.
Yeah.
And if you're a part of the two, like 3-4% that strikes gold and becomes successful, now you're being projected into a society or like a different bracket where the women in that category have been looking for somebody like you, somebody naive,
Yep.
somebody who has money and doesn't know what to do with it, and they get spoiled and they
PJ
get
Washington.
spoiled. Yeah, I mean, PJ Washington, we talked about it. We might have to upload
Yeah.
that video back up to this page so y'all can reference to it.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
bro, that was like the biggest thing. Like that's a prime example of like what's going on. So it's also about men need to be held accountable too. It's not just the
Yeah. We need to
women
be
that are
held
doing it.
accountable for sure. Yeah.
The like people like Dababy, like Future, things like that. I mean, they're showing accountability, to be honest. Like they know they're straight up with these women, this, and that. And the fact that these women think that they can change them is the downfall of most of these women. Granted, they're getting a check, but we talked about this, and we'll probably talk about it later, where all this assistant, like money, is being replaced by parents, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
Yep.
that's something that like even government assistance has pretty much made it into like single family homes are okay as long as you're getting a check out of it. And that's just not where it's at. Like,
Not at all. Not at all. And it's just one of those things where I think it's, again, it goes back to the lack of education, the lack of discipline that men have, because ultimately, the whole manosphere space, whether it be the general manosphere or the black manosphere, a lot of this has been spawned since because of the lack of exposure on men issues, men in silence trying to talk about these issues and these problems that they've had. But all the while, when you juxtapose it to all these daytime shows like Oprah and all this stuff talking about women's issues, but they never talk about the men's side. And all of this comes back from when, the whole war on drugs and the welfare state. Shout out to Mr. or Dr. Thomas Sowell. I believe he's a doctor, I'm not sure. But he's a black conservative who talks about these issues, and it's like, ever since, you know, again, the war on drugs took all the black men off of the streets, out of the homes, and it's like it's this thing, because it talks back to this other talk that we're talking about. Young Dolph, he grew up with his grandparents. All these guys are growing up with their grandparents or just the mom, and it's like we need two parents in the household for a higher success rate to have functioning members of society. Because now you have a generation of men that are super soft, they don't have a backbone, and social media just makes this into this monster where you have e-girls and these dudes spending hundreds of dollars on women that they on the internet, and simping, and it's just this culture of like, oh, I gotta pay to get any affection from women, and then everyone is on their phones and everything, and they don't go out and meet and develop social skills and all this stuff. And it's just it's causing a lot of these issues that we have with when it comes on to dating and relationships. And I believe, and this goes back to your point where it's saying, right now it's a 16-year-old to like around 20 that's kind of in this arena, to where it's either, I think that these 16-year-olds to 20-year-olds right now are either going to be completely simps, or they're going to soak up information like this or in other channels on the manosphere, and they're going to be like, you know what, a lot of these women are not for me, or it's going to be very hard for me to find a decent woman, so let me just concentrate on what I'm going to do, focus on my goals, figure out what I'm going to do in life. And if I can't find a woman in the West, like, I'm going to get my passport and I'm going to be gone. And then there's going to be a lot of women that are going to be like, yo, where all the good men at,
in
cat
Europe
food, and
and
yeah, they
in
can invest heavily in cat food and
Netherlands,
dog food.
like
Yeah.
yeah, like, and that's the thing too, is like the more successful men become, the more they can travel, the more they can get away. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why a lot of these dudes who are successful, like I mean, just use the military in general. Like a lot of these dudes find their first wife or like find their
Yeah,
soulmates in other countries because
yeah,
the the difference between women in the West and the East and wherever you're at,
Europe, yeah,
yeah, like it's vastly different. Um,
vastly different. Yeah,
I think that one from talking to my homeboys is like women in Europe have more uh, independence. I mean, a lot of them
mm-hmm,
grow up with two parents in the house, like we talked about.
mm-hmm,
So they have respect for their fathers. Um, their father usually guides them and says, like, yo, you don't want a man who does this, you don't want a man who does that, this, and that. And the mother usually be like, depending on what roles they're playing, but we'll just base it off of this. And then the mother will be like, follow your feelings. Like, I believe in whatever you believe in, you will. And they kind of let them live their lives to the extent where they're not really involved in their personal choices, but they're always there for them even after they've made good or bad decisions, and they kind of
yeah,
reaffirm. Because I
yeah,
remember we went to a party when I first got to Europe, and my homeboy, he messed it all up with that girl, but she was like 22, 23. I think I was like 28 or something like that at the time. But like the conversation that I had with her just about like the differences between Europe, how growing up in Europe was different from like vastly different from like the United States. And then her giving me views on like, okay, this is what we see from Europe based on Americans and American girls and how they act. And it's just like polar opposites of how like the American girl thinks and how the European girl thinks. And that
mm-hmm,
was the thing is like a lot of American dudes come over here and they get a woman who is confident, who has their own things, who kind of just doesn't like follow them for cloud or whatever they're doing. They just kind of want to be in their space and they want to grow with them and things like that. And a lot of these men don't know how to deal with that because in the
yeah.
back of their mind,
There's
they're always thinking somebody's going to backstab them or like use them for until they get to a certain point. But like I've seen a lot of successful relationships happen over here. And that's the thing is like it's a vastly different playing ground, like a playing field. And that's the thing is like most of the stuff that's on social media, a lot of these other countries believe it to be true. And granted, some of it is, but
mm-hmm,
it doesn't make it any better for the women who are in the Western world who are actually doing things and don't have ill intentions for men and things like that, because the small majority who are messing it up and who are being projected are the ones that are influencing these men's mind
yeah,
to be like, okay, well, if I get my money, then there's always going to be some chick after my money. So any chick that's willing to talk to me when I have money has probably got some hidden motives or values, or she's after
yeah,
this or this and that. And I think it's dangerous times, like we said before, is like you have to really know who is there for you and who isn't. And the biggest thing I can say is follow your intuition for sure, because if you have a feeling that something is off, your body has its own self-defense mechanism that is internally locked into your feelings, your emotions, and everything like that. So like if something does not feel right, 10 out of 10 times it's probably going to be the right decision. Like think about when you're walking down the street and you get this eerie feeling like, oh man, like I need to be aware of my surroundings. And then that's just kind of the same feelings when it comes to like being in a relationship and being open with
mm-hmm,
somebody, because those signs are just it's the same thing. Your body knows what you're what you should be worried about before you even know. So
yeah. It's definitely one of those things where it's interesting times for women and men at the same time, because it always goes back to I guess false expectations and high standards that a lot of Western women have. Because I mean, like even at work, I see these dudes, regular blue collar dudes. I'm in a blue collar job right now,
mm,
and they and their wife like spend time and make them bento lunches, bento boxes. For those of you who don't know, in Japan, like they have this whole, I guess the bento is like a box lunch, and it's like carefully cooked, and and it's arranged in patterns and different things, and it's like they got their wives doing that, every day. And it's like, how many Western women know how to cook, much less to make that for their husbands? Because a lot of the times, like, I hear a lot of people, you go to the in the States, and these blue collar workers, they're going to the Aldi's or the supermarkets to get, or the fast food to get lunch. Like,
Yeah.
in Japan, it's not like that, for the dudes that have Japanese wives. And it's just one of those things where it's like women in the West are so preoccupied with think applying male standards of success to themselves, where it's like, men don't care how much money you make if they're making their own money. Like, men don't care about you being, a partner or whatever, in terms of like financials and all that stuff. It's like, what are men are looking for? Like, can you bring me peace? Can you take care of the house? If can you are you a good candidate to be the mother of my children? And I mean, the more, I guess, feminine that a woman is, the more attractive it is for a man, or
Yeah.
especially a man of worth. And it's just one of those things where women don't understand, because it all goes back to a lot of what these manosphere channels are talking about. A lot of these women, they want the 1%, 10% of men where they have six packs or 6 feet tall, they're making six figures and all this stuff. And they want to be monogamous with them. And it's like, these dudes are not, for most part, are not monogamous. Or
No.
even if they are monogamous, they got like, the baddest of the bad on their hip
No.
that are like housewives, super
Yeah, they
submissive,
could. I
super
mean, like,
feminine. So it's like,
and the thing is,
yeah.
like, most successful men in that sphere, like in that small circle, they probably have a
Yeah.
maid, they probably have a chef. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
their wife isn't having to do all these things that
Mm-hmm.
these other women are complaining about. And they're just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, why can't I have a man like that? And it's like, well, most of the time, if they're both that successful, they're both bringing in at least six figures, period.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not even about the money, because it's just like, yeah, like, we need to buy a house. Okay, cool. Let's go buy a house. Uh, Financial situations aren't the the problem in those type of relationships. Usually it's the
Mm-mm.
time spent, like all the things that people are looking for, like, and saying that um so for example, like, if you're successful, both of you guys are successful, you're making over six figures, you're probably working anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a day. The time that you spend together needs to be the primary focus on what is going to keep that relationship working. So even if you work 8 to 12 hours, when you come home, that means I'm not on my phone, we're talking about our day, we have dinner cooked, either we're cooking dinner together, we're not cooking dinner together, we're eating out, we're planning a date, or just vice versa, spending that time. And that's quality time is what generally makes the relationship work, because everything else outside of that can be handled in a logical and a meaningful way, essentially meaning that you guys know that this is something that needs to be done, regardless if it means that we're not going to be spending time together, or um, there's just going to be some miscommunications for like a day or two, maybe even a week, maybe even 2 weeks sometimes. Maybe it's just like you
Mm-hmm.
guys get thrown into work. And that brings me back to there was another guy I watched. He did an interview with his wife. I linked it to you, but I'll link it in the
Mm-hmm.
description. But his wife at some point said that she wanted something for herself, and she was tired of being like a housewife and this and that. And it was different because he was so used to her being a housewife that when she changed into uh, this person,
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't sure her marriage was going to survive. But she said he was very understanding. He saw that she wanted something better for herself, and he wasn't selfish about it. That's the biggest thing, is like, if your partner wants to do something in life and it may set you back like 6 months or a year, that's something that you need to be willing to sacrifice, because you need to pick up the slack. Like, that's hands down, period. And that's why most of these relationships work, because it's not always sunshine and daisies, bro. Like, sometimes one of you guys is going to have to take an L so that the other one can get a dub in the long run. And the dub in the long run will benefit
It's
both of
gonna
you
benefit
guys.
both of you. a lot of people don't see it, men and women. Like a lot of people, is like they, you know, they're comfortable, they're in the situation, and they're so locked into this concept of comfort,
Mhm.
where if they took the uncomfortable route, you know, whether that's you sacrificing time, whether that's you separating for a little bit, or whether that's you moving somewhere else, they don't see that it's going to benefit both of y'all and your kids in the long run. But, you
Yeah.
know, goes back to big egos and selfishness and all this stuff and not
But
working
that's the
together
thing
as a team.
too. That's the thing too is like, I mean, a lot of successful people have broken up and just kind of been like, yo, we can't dedicate the time that we need right now to this relationship. So let's, before we ruin the relationship, let's step away from it. We'll work on our goals. And then when we come back to a position where we don't have to focus on each other, because a relationship is a lot of work, even with pursuing your goals. That's why a lot of successful men focus on their relationships first, or their careers first, before they go looking for a relationship. If everything else in your life is fine, like if you're successful, it doesn't matter if a woman comes in and out of your life. And that's something that we can relate to these artists. Like,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if she's in his life, because at the end of the day, he still got his baby's mama. He still got those other chicks that he was messing with. So it's like, what are you really bringing to him
exactly.
if it's not peace of
Exactly.
mind? Like, if peace of mind isn't the thing that you're bringing to him, and you want to be like, well, I had your baby and you told me you love me and this, and that, is like, that's already truthfully like a turnoff for most men, where it's like, yo, you're really just acting childish. And
Hmm.
it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, maybe when it started off, like they both had their own things going, so it wasn't like a commitment. And maybe at some point, like he was like telling her like, oh, I want to be with you, this, and that. But that's the thing, is like, she went through a whole pregnancy. After the pregnancy, she was probably acting a little bit different. She wasn't giving him enough time, things like that. Like, these are things that happen after having a
Hmm.
child, going through a pregnancy and things like that. And his mentality shifted from initially what it was. And granted, she put herself in the situation to deal with somebody like that, who potentially can't see things from her point of view. And that was her mistake. His
Yeah.
mistake, or his problem, is that he is not seeing it from her perspective, and he is not trying to become or be what she wants him to be. He had,
Hmm.
essentially, it was like, yo, it was fun while it lasted, but now I'm kind of getting tired of you, and I'm gonna just keep it pushing. Like, I can be a father to my kids. Like, I can give you money. Like, that's not a problem. But as far as this relationship goes, as far as like you giving me peace of mind, that's not happening right now. And I don't need it. And that's the thing about hyper successful men, not all of them, but like these rappers, these NBA stars, these people who are just like, I got money, I'm gonna get out of here. And that's the thing, is like, maybe like 10, 15 years down the line, it doesn't work out for them. And then they're just down and out. And then these chicks have moved on. I mean, think about the
Yeah.
Future and Sierra situation, where she moved on. Like, she literally moved
Hmm.
on. Like, and she's fine. But that's the
Yeah,
thing, the
she's good now.
Future, I mean, at a certain point, Future was like, oh, I'm gonna get her back. And she was just like, I'm not going. And that's the difference between a lot of these women, is like, Sierra is probably the prime example. I mean, somebody's probably going to dig something up and be like, well, Sierra did this, and that. And I'm like, I don't care. Me, based off of what I've seen, Sierra was dealing with Future. She was in love with him, like really in love with him, because I watched a couple documentaries on him. And she fell out of love with him and she moved on. She said this was fun while it lasted. It was toxic. She doesn't want that type of toxicity in her life. She doesn't want it for her
Hmm.
son. And she went and found somebody who treats her right, who is successful also,
Yeah.
who's not, doesn't have 7, 8 babies mamas, who's not doing all these things. And that's fine. But that's the thing, is like, women have to realize that they need to pursue better candidates. Like,
Yeah.
and men, as far as men go, I mean, men are going to be men, because at when you're successful, you're going to have so many options that you have to figure out what you actually want as a man. And the thing is, as they say, women mature a lot faster than men in most cases. Um, at least like emotionally, and as far as like relationship goes and things like that. But men are
Mhm.
stubborn, they're hard-headed, they're gonna draw this out. And that's why a lot of successful men, or like a lot of men, start settling down when they're like over 40.
Yeah.
Like a lot of men, like it takes them that long to realize like what they had, what they lost. And that's something that men have to deal with, because to be honest, like Future's not going to make music forever. The
No,
baby's
he's
not going
not.
to make music forever. Like a lot of these dudes, I mean, think about Kobe Bryant, like where he had an interview where he was like, you're most NBA players are done playing at like 32. He got
Yep.
lucky and he went in the league a little bit longer, but then you have to start shifting your focus on like, how are you going to make money after that? Like, what is your passion
Mhm.
going to be after that? Because everything has a time limit on it as far as instant gratification. Men, the older they get, maybe they get a little wiser, maybe they get this and that. But like, you're not going to be as youthful as you used to be. You're not going to have as much energy. You're not going to have as much dedication and time that you want, depending on what you're doing. And I mean, it goes both ways. I mean, a lot of women stay stubborn until they're like older. But the thing is like settling has kind of become the norm, because like a lot of people are
Yeah.
so stubborn after the age of like what, 30, 36, 35. Like after they get to that 30 age frame, like they're kind of stuck in their ways, to be honest.
Mhm.
And that's kind of hard to change, especially for two adults who have been through a past. I think by the time you're 30, you've been through a lot in your life, and there's a lot of things that you don't want to make sacrifices for. So you spend your 30s to your 40s essentially building up mental fortitude, building up these not necessarily walls, but like you're building up a way to be self-sufficient, like, and be
Exactly. Yeah.
fine with being alone and things like that. But that's the thing, is like being alone for that long does a lot to you, as far as like opening up to somebody else once the time comes. And that's where the work comes in. If you really want to be with
Yeah.
somebody, you're going to be stubborn, but that's a part of like the growing process, and that could be on both sides, to be honest. I think that what we can learn from this situation is that men are going to be men. uh, they're going to do what they feel is right no matter what, even if it means that they lose a good woman, uh, and realize it later on in life. But that's the thing, is like successful men are always going to have more options. So that's something that is kind of their downfall, is like they always have an option past that until they don't have an option. And then they
Exactly. Yeah.
may end up settling later. As far as the woman's aspect on it, like the women just need to pick better men. Like
Better men. Yeah.
I get it that you want to have somebody who's successful, you want to have somebody who initially cares about you, but the thing is, men can be volatile when they get in certain situations, and their whole mentality changes like that. Like the snap of the finger, like. And that's the thing, that's the difference between men and women, is like men can sometimes be more logical thinkers and be like, okay, well, this doesn't benefit me and this is a distraction, so I need to cut off all distractions. Women can think more with emotions and feelings, and oh, excuse me. And men don't always use emotions and feelings, because how society treats the two of us. Men are not unconditionally loved. Women are always
We're
unconditionally loved for the
unconditional
most
love. Yeah.
part. If you see two people struggling on the streets, most of the time people are going to be more willing to help the woman rather than help the man, because men are designed to be providers. They're designed to achieve bigger and better things. And if a man cannot achieve that, then they are seen as a failure to society.
But yeah.
And that's just that's just how our society
That's how
works,
it
bro.
is. Yeah.
Like nobody, and that's the thing too, is like you're seeing more men talk about emotions, talk about feelings. Like there was a TikTok I watched the other day where it was like, men, who do you call when you're at your lowest point? And it's just like,
It's like,
nobody.
I'm a man, dude.
Like, yeah, it's like I'm
Nobody.
a man, like nobody. It's like the one dude was like, we can call people, like, but nobody wants to hear you vent. Nobody wants to hear you, like, I mean, if you have good friends, they do care about you. But for the most part, outside of that friend group, nobody cares. Like,
Yeah, that's why
period.
that's why it's important that you got homies you can vent to. But I mean, it's just, I guess it's just one of those things of stoicism where, you know, you have that lone wolf mentality, that like, you know, step poker face mentality.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, is it, I mean, this could be a question posed to the audience, like, do you think it's toxic for men to be like that, or is it you know, a sign of strength? But I think especially as black men, we're just conditioned that way. It's just,
I mean, it's almost twice as hard for black
yeah,
men.
it's just,
I mean, even minorities in general in other
yeah.
countries, like it's not just, I mean, you think about like, because Europe is a little bit different. They have a lot of
Mhm.
refugees and things like that. But I mean, they know the struggle. But the thing is, the mentality with them is like, I know that I got to struggle, but I'm still going to go to work. I'm not going to call
Yeah.
out to go party with my friends. Like most of these dudes, like European dudes who work like for a living, don't have a lot of friends. Like they literally just come home. They know the like people like on their route home. They'll talk to the people at the grocery store or whatever store they go to. And that's kind of like their interaction, their friends, and they kind of build stronger relationships. It's like living in the South. Like everybody's kind of like, oh, I know you, you're so and so's cousin, this, and that. And that's kind of like how Europe is, where like if I'm out here working and I work on planes or I work at the airport or I work for a delivery service or something like that, the people that I meet on that route in my daily routine are usually like my quote unquote friends or
Friends.
people that I can have conversations with. And beyond that, you're just kind of like nobody cares about what you're doing. They stick to
That's interesting.
themselves. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a different lifestyle out here, and I truthfully enjoy it because people care more essentially out here. Um, Not always, because I mean, you do have people who just don't like Americans or don't like refugees or don't like people from other countries. I mean, it's just like Japan. We've seen it before, where it's like
Yeah.
we talked about it before, where it's like, yo, if you're not Japanese, then they're kind of just like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Like I don't mess with you. Period.
Yeah.
Like I don't care where you're from. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how talented you are. If you're not from Japan, if you're not Japanese, I don't mess with you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's facts.
So
But I think, guys, we pretty much talked everything that we're gonna talk about. Just giving my final thoughts on it. On one side, I feel like it was kind of foul for him to live, not necessarily record it, but live stream it on Instagram. Like, I mean, in spite of your feelings towards her, at least have the respect. Like, you know, that's your baby mom's. And for DaniLeigh, I just feel like you kind of, I mean, you're in the limelight too, you're in the industry too. You kind of have to understand, like, you know, it's the rapper. They kind of have a bad reputation. Already has baby mamas, bunch of red flags. I don't know why you decide to, you know, lay with him. And even if you decided to, like, you know, smash, like, you know, you could have used birth control. I mean, there's just a bunch of things where it's like a bunch of decisions that went on that just didn't end up in the right result. But either way, guys, if you got this far in the video, don't forget to give us a like, comment, and subscribe, because it goes a long way to helping this channel grow. And with that being said, I'm your boy Pop,
Willie Man,
and we will see you in the next one. Peace.
peace.